pandemic world, Tala and her daughter Annalyn are trying their very best to survive with minimum resources. Tala is working as a painter and Annalyn has an aptitude for doing different electrical work. Tala is a highly caring mother and she just wants the best for her daughter. Annalyn is an energetic woman and wants the best for her family too, but sometimes Tala disapproves of her actions. Both of them are trying to make ends meet in a world that doesn't have much left. The pandemic changed everything and the virus not only affected humanity, but it also affected animals and crops around the globe. This led to shortages of food which became the reason for rioting and chaos all over the world. Unable to control the masses who battled over food and other resources, the government and societies eventually broke down. When the disease finally passed, a new world government came into being, known as the Bureau. It decided to offer survivors protection and resources for a cost which is known as the deal. One day, Tala picks up Annalyn and they head toward the market. Tala is able to cut the line and buy some meat. She is given this privilege because she has taken the deal. After having dinner, Tala reminds Annalyn of what she can get for some of Tala's prized possessions when she is no longer alive. Annalyn is visibly moved and she doesn't even want to think that her mother is not going to be around in a few days. The deal is apparently getting 20 years worth of resources, food, and shelter, and in exchange, a person has to trade in their life to the Bureau once the 20 years have passed. The Bureau puts a timer inside a person's body who has taken the deal. Tala took the deal 20 years ago to provide for her family when her husband abandoned her and Annalyn. An emotional Annalyn doesn't want to have a conversation about her mother leaving the world soon, and she heads out to the nightclub. When the power goes out at the nightclub, Annalyn uses her skills to bring power back. A woman who has moved into the block, Kabira, appreciates Annalyn's skills. Kabira tells Annalyn that she works at the morgue, and Annalyn tells her that she has taken electrical engineering classes for 2 years. Things get weird for Annalyn when Kabira questions if Annalyn has taken the deal or not. Annalyn lets her know that she plans on heading out of this place. When told that there is no way out of there, Annalyn says that the railroad is a way out for some. Kabira and a few other girls tell Annalyn that the Bureau shut down the railroad a few years ago. Kabira mockingly asks Annalyn if she knows one person who has gotten out of this place through the railroad. Annalyn says that she believes her father used it to leave this horrendous place. Kabira and a few other girls mock Annalyn by saying that her father may have left for another woman. An upset Annalyn sits down with her boyfriend, Jin, on the rooftop. As Jin is aware that Tala's time is coming up and her processing is in 4 days, he assures Annalyn that he would always be by Annalyn's side. Annalyn returns home late and Tala questions why she came home that late. Tala doesn't approve of Annalyn's boyfriend either. Annalyn says that Jin is like a family to her, and when Tala would eventually leave her, Jin would be by her side. When Annalyn suddenly feels pain in her lower back, Tala goes to check if she's okay. She finds Annalyn to be burning with a high fever. As Tala still has the deal, she uses it to get Annalyn checked by a doctor despite Annalyn's resistance. The doctor breaks the bad news and turns Tala's world upside down when she informs that Annalyn's kidneys are failing, and she would need a kidney transplant urgently. Tala is heartbroken over the fact that she doesn't have much time left on Earth and now she has to see her daughter go through so much pain. The doctors make it clear that only relatives are the best match for a transplant. In this case, Tala would have to be the donor. Tala and Annalyn head to the hospital to schedule a transplant as soon as possible. Tala is informed that she and Annalyn would have to wait 6 months in order to get an appointment with the doctor. As Tala only has 4 days left, she argues with the hospital administrator that she can't wait for 6 months as her processing is in 4 days. The worker sadly tells Tala that she can't do anything for Tala as there's no doctor available at the very moment. As Tala begins to get loud with the worker, Annalyn takes Tala aside and tells her she can take the deal. Knowing what it is like to take the deal and how it can affect one's life, Tala promises to find an alternative so that Annalyn doesn't ever have to think about taking the deal. Tala takes Annalyn to the Bureau of Life where she asks one of the personnel if she can get an extension of 6 months on her process, as she has to wait for that much time for her daughter's transplant due to the unavailability of doctors. The female worker reminds Tala that there's no such rule in the policy that would allow the person who has taken the deal in getting an extension. Tala makes a case when she says that she just needs an extension for her daughter's transplant as she would still come back after 6 months for her process, or in other words, to give her life. Knowing what the entire situation is, the worker can't help Tala in any way possible and suggests Annalyn take the deal. The worker also blames Tala for putting herself and especially her family in this situation. Before she could get more frustrated, a man, who was listening to the entire conversation, comes up to Tala. The man tells Tala that he can help her and Annalyn. Not having any other option at the moment, Tala has to accept that man's offer even if she has no idea who that man is. Annalyn and Tala head to that man's apartment and Annalyn is still suspicious as to why that man would be kind enough to help them out. The man happens to be a doctor and would help Tala and Annalyn with the transplant. Annalyn asks the doctor what would happen if her mother doesn't show up during her day for her processing. The doctor shares the terrible possibility of the timer heating Tala's blood if she doesn't show up at the bureau on her processing day. Before the doctor could begin with the transplant, Annalyn looks around the apartment. Annalyn gasps when she finds the organs of various individuals in the doctor's closet. Both Tala and Annalyn are alarmed that the doctor would eventually eliminate them instead of performing any transplant. Tala and Annalyn are able to save their lives and run without the doctor knowing where they went. Tala thinks that they should find a reliable doctor, but Annalyn has had enough at this point. She says that her father could be a perfect choice for the transplant, but Tala, knowing how Annalyn's father abandoned both of them years ago, doesn't want to talk about her husband. Annalyn reminds her mother that they don't have much time left. Tala doesn't even know if her husband is alive or not. Data regarding the alive individuals is only accessible to the personnel at the bureau, and no ordinary man can't access that information. But knowing how smart Annalyn is, she has a solution. Annalyn and Tala head to Jin's apartment and inform him about the entire weird situation. Jin claims that if they want to look into their father's record, he knows a bureau official with a bureau terminal who can be bribed. When told that Tala would need to have an insane amount of cash to bribe that official, Tala is forced to do the one thing she never wanted to do: sell her invaluable jewelry. She is even forced to sell it for an amount she thinks is quite low for her jewelry. Now that they have the money to bribe the bureau official, Annalyn and Tala try to find a way to reach the bureau official's society. Tala is forced to steal the van of a laundromat company and disguise herself and Annalyn as the employees of the company. Both of them are able to enter society, and they are baffled to see how the bureau officials are living an extravagant life in beautiful homes while people like them are fighting for basic necessities. Tala and Annalyn enter the bureau official's home, but they are informed by the official's wife that he isn't home. The wife, however, lets Annalyn and Tala use the system through which they are fortunately able to find Annalyn's father's address. Annalyn's father, Michael, happens to live in the same society as Annalyn and Tala. He just has kept his presence a secret. Even though Tala has no aspirations of meeting Michael, she has to do it for the sake of Annalyn's well-being. Tala and Annalyn meet with Michael, who is just as flattered to see them. An awkward situation is created when all three of them sit down and have nothing much to discuss. Tala cuts to the chase and informs Michael of Annalyn's condition and that she needs a kidney. Upon asking why Tala won't be giving hers, Michael is told that Tala's processing is in 4 days. When it seems like Michael is trying to make excuses when he tells Tala to find another donor, Michael reveals that he also took the deal after he left Tala and Annalyn. Tala is shocked to hear that Michael is going through the same situation as she is. Michael informs that his processing is in 4 months and he, too, won't be able to wait for 6 months. Tala yells at Michael for not being a responsible father and abandoning him. An enraged Michael reveals to Annalyn that he left them because he and Tala promised to never take the deal. Tala, however, took it before the birth of Annalyn so that she could provide for the family. Michael left because he believed Tala didn't trust him in providing for the family without ever having the need of taking the deal. Tala goes to the bathroom to give herself some space, but is surprised to find nothing in the bathroom except a bag pack. Tala thinks that Michael is trying to leave the city. When they leave the apartment, Tala and Annalyn decide to follow Michael. Annalyn believes that Michael must be going towards the railroad. For the next day, Annalyn and Tala follow Michael wherever he's going. Michael stays the night in a restricted zone. Annalyn and Tala decide to do the same. The night day, Michael finds out that both of them are following him. Michael tells them that there's a place outside of the city that has all of the basic necessities to survive. The place is the railroad. The people of the railroad don't let anyone in. Instead, they choose others. Michael was approached by that place as his skills were required. Upon asking if the people of the city have doctors and would know how to remove the timers of the people who have taken the deal, Michael says yes. Annalyn and Tala are beyond excited to hear this. Soon, scavengers arrive and all three of them run for their lives. In this process, Annalyn accidentally forgets her bag, which contains her pills for pain. Aware of her daughter's situation, Michael tries to give it a shot and would plead for allowing his family into that secret society. And at one point all of them get caught by the bureau official, but they fight through it all and reach the outside of the city. They camp near the lake where the boat would arrive and pick Michael up. During that night, Michael and Tala try to make amends and forget about the hard time they had to have without each other. After almost 20 long years, the entire family has come together for the very first time. The next morning, a man arrives on a boat to pick up Michael. Michael asks that man if he could bring his family along with him. The man rebukes Michael for discussing with other people about the secretive place. The man refuses to allow Tala and Annalyn to come with them even when he is told of Annalyn's situation. Michael, who is furious over how that man could be cold-hearted, begins to strangle that man but lets him go as he has no choice. Michael abandons his family once again and leaves with the other man. Tala and Annalyn are left stranded. Both of them have no other option but to return to their home. Annalyn is emotional over the thought of her mother going to the Bureau of Life and ending her life for good. Tala apologizes to Annalyn for not being a good enough mother, but Annalyn doesn't feel that way. Tala bids Annalyn farewell forever and leaves for her processing. Not having anyone anymore, Annalyn heads to Jin as he is all she has left now. Knowing what Annalyn is going through, Kabira tells Annalyn that there's a way to save Tala. As the time has come for Tala's processing, Tala breathes her last remaining seconds. An employee arrives and does the one thing Tala never expected. The employee has reset Tala's timer for another 20 years. Not knowing what all of this means, Tala shockingly learns that Annalyn traded her own life for Tala. A horrified Tala runs to save her daughter, who had a big heart for saving her mother at her own expense. Tala runs to save Annalyn, but it's too late as Annalyn ends up taking the poisonous potion. Tala breaks down mentally, knowing what her daughter had just done. Soon, Jin and Kabira arrive and give Annalyn a shot that revives her. Tala is dumbfounded by all that is going on. It turns out, Kabira works for the railroad and the people of that area have been wanting to bring in Annalyn. But Annalyn was stubborn as she didn't want to leave without her mother. Eventually, it was Michael who talked to the people and they allowed Tala and Annalyn to come to the railroad. Knowing how her entire life has changed for the better, Tala and Annalyn embrace each other for a much better life now.